for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah. We're here for it, yeah.
Hey guys, it's Paula. Welcome back to the SheHH podcast. In today's episode, we have Rae Rae, a UK gospel artist and TV and radio presenter. We speak to her about her EP conversations, her music influences and style, and what it's like being signed to a small independent label. Make sure to join in the conversation using hashtag SheHH podcast and share this episode with all your friends.
So I would like you to just introduce yourself to the audience. So anyone who doesn't know you, how would you kind of present yourself to people?
Yeah, so I am Rae Rae. I'm a UK gospel artist. I'm also a presenter. And yeah, I mean, so many different things about me, but I do love to sing and I love God.
Amazing. We love the I love God bit for sure. So just kind of playing on the fact that you're a UK gospel artist, a lot of people that sing in church and, have a nice voice and maybe sing in the choir, lead praise and worship, then go on to be a gospel singer or gospel artist. They just assume that that's the next progression in the whole thing. So whereas you've kind of like mentioned in your bio and just about yourself that you believe that you were called into it. And so we kind of want to just ask, what are the signs that God gave you and you were called into this ministry?
Definitely. It's a good question. I mean, I think it's always very good to be transparent and open about the journey. As you said, some people just think 1 + 1 = 2 and that's it. But there's definitely a journey. And I think it's so nice that each one of us, each worship leader, we all have a different story to tell. And that story will resonate with someone somewhere. But I think for me specifically, I grew up in church. I've led the youth choir in church, and I think just being in roles like that definitely gave me skills. It definitely helped me to understand how to appreciate people, to not take people for granted. It taught me so much, and I think one main thing that I will say is, in terms of service, like service is so important. And I think I've come to realize that when you've been given that opportunity to serve, and then you then go on the flip side and people are serving you, I mean, it will definitely put you in that humble spot, because you know how it is to be treated on the other side. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, my journey has gone through singing in church, leading choirs, as I've said, to being a backing vocalist for worship ministers. And again, I think it's just always that privilege of seeing how things have been done. So I would say that was almost like a training ground for me. So it's like, I'm not just going to send you out there. And I'm just immediately reminded of David. He had his training period, before he could kill Goliath. He was there in the field. He could kill a lion, he could kill a bear. But yeah, definitely, I would say we should not forsake the training grounds. So that's what I would say.
Amazing. And in that journey that you were going through it, did you ever have a point where you mentally noticed that this is God telling me one day I'm going to be doing this as a career or as a ministry to pursue? Did you ever have moments like that?
Do you know what? Like from the age of 10, I knew, or even before, I knew that I loved singing so much. Like, I always share this story that my mum bought me this creative box, and it had like colorful paper, and I was really into arts and craft and all that. And I remember specifically using those colored pieces of papers to like write songs. And I've shared this on my Instagram as well, and on my YouTube, that I actually put together like a leaflet, so to speak, and on the front of it said "My Dream," and I actually like wrote down a list of songs what I want on my CD, and that was from the age of 10. And I always say, like, we should never be shy of writing the vision. And it's just so nice that even though I was young and I wrote it down, I wasn't knowing that I was actually doing something. Do you know what I mean? Like almost speaking into my future. So when I look back, I'm like, this has actually been since I was like really young. And I think
yesterday.
And literally on the journey, I feel like God has spoken to me in different ways. He's spoken to me through dreams, through just, if I do go and minister, I just see what God does and what takes place, when the Holy Spirit is present. And I'm like, why wouldn't I want to walk on this path, knowing that people are being blessed by it, people's lives are being touched by this. Like, this is a ministry. So yeah, I think definitely God has shown me in different ways that this is the path that He wants me to walk on. Because trust me, there was a moment in time that I was like, gospel music, mainstream, like which one should I do? But again, going back to what He had shown me, I just felt like, I mean, this is personal to me, but I just felt like mainstream music can't do the same. It can't have the same impact that gospel music or Christian music can have.
So I love that you said that about Christian music being impactful, and that's why when you had that kind of mainstream, non-mainstream, Jesus, not Jesus kind of moment, it was nice for you to click back into, but this is how impactful music is. I kind of wanted you to touch on that and kind of explain what you think the difference between, being a Christian who sings or being a singer, being a Christian singer. Do you know what I mean? Like,
right,
kind of Christian and do the mainstream. What do you think about that?
I think it's a very interesting question. And of course, everyone has their own opinion on that. I think it still boils down to what you've been called to. I don't think I can say you should do this or you should do that. I think once you hear where God is leading you to, then it's only for you to be obedient and follow that. I think in anything that we do, I think the main point is to be the light. He said that he was the light in the world, and He has called us to be a light to the world as well. So in whatever sector that we're in, I think we shouldn't also make the mistake of thinking you have to be part of a Christian organization, you have to just sing Christian music. No, you can still bless people in your workplace, if it's in the hospital or if it's whatever your job role is. So I think that would be my answer to that question.
I respect that. I think that's really good. And it kind of follows on really nicely to what I'm going to ask you next about, which is, I mean, in your bio, you say loving God every step of the way, which sounds like you are. And it kind of from that, because if you are in spaces that aren't necessarily Christian or conventionally gospel, you can still shine a light in that way. My question is, how important, and hopefully you're going to say very important, but how important has God been in sustaining you in your journey so far?
Well, very important. Literally, as I said, I think, first of all, I'm blessed to have even been introduced to this person of Jesus Christ in the first place. And I thank my mum for doing that. And I think it then got to a point where I got to know who this Jesus is for myself. And I think it's always great when we get our own revelation. So we're not living off of the back of my mum's God or my dad's God. Do you know what I mean? So I think just knowing Him already, that was a bonus. And then knowing that He's not a God that I can pick and choose to use whenever I want, but it's literally every step of the way. It's in the highs, it's in the lows. And I've just been, I guess, in my Christian walk, just been mindful to not just think that God is only for a specific prayer point or like try to box Him, but I can speak to Him about everything and anything, and I can be real and open about every single issue. So I would say I can't do this ministry without Him. He's the reason why I'm doing it. So
it's encouraging to hear, I think, because sometimes in the desire for fame and for people to know your name, and then you happen to be a Christian as well, it just feels like certain ministries are the easiest to do because they're public facing. So just to hear you say that you couldn't do it without Him just proves that, again, you've been called, and it's not just the desire for, oh, I want people to say my name.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. That's honestly
Thank
beautiful.
you.
So you kind of have this nickname. I don't know if this was like a childhood thing, Rae Sunshine, which I totally get from talking
Oh,
to you. Honestly, you're just so like
thanks.
lovely. Um, it even links down to your music, because a lot of your music kind of has that contemporary light feel, and obviously you have a very jazzy, soulful voice. You've probably heard that before. So I kind of wanted to ask, like, how you developed your sound over the years.
Yeah, so the first things first, the Ray of Sunshine, it was just pinned by like friends. And I think, to be honest, it goes really nicely. I think with my personality, I am friendly. I do like to brighten up the room. I do like to make sure people are okay, try to check on people and stuff. So it just kind of, I was like, oh, Ray of Sunshine. So it kind of worked. But in terms of my sound, I would say music is always very interesting, and I think it's always nice as an artist to explore different sounds. But I think at the moment, I would say it's like Christian R&B-ish, kind of pop sometimes. But I'm really looking forward to exploring different genres. I don't know, maybe one day I'll tap into jazz and soul and see if it works for me.
I would love that.
But I think mainly, not just in terms of hearing the sound, but just in terms of, I guess, the message. I do want it to be uplifting, and also just being real about, maybe what I go through, because you want your music to be relatable. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, 100%. And I think you've mentioned before that some of your favorite artists kind of growing up, and the people that you listened to growing up, were like Rae Rae and S2E1. The OGs. Like all the church kids know about them. They do. And I think you can always tell when an artist grew up listening to like Rae Rae and S2E1. You can always tell, which is a good thing. But who's in your playlist these days? Like, what type of artists do you listen to?
Oh, this is interesting, because during like this lockdown and everything, I've just been trying to listen to a lot of artists, and I think just to also help me with like writing and not just trying to put myself in a specific box as well. But oh gosh, lately, because of this lockdown, like God forbid this lockdown tries to steal my joy, I've been listening to songs that, have just been making me, break a leg here and there. So I've been listening to a lot of them, Limo Blaze. Which, has definitely helped in times where I'm just like, this is just so boring and whatever. I listen to my what would I call them? My counterparts? No. Well, anyway, the artists that are also part of the label that I'm part of. So Call Out Music, Deborah, Mafo Music, Marizu, definitely. Because it's just good that we support one another. And apart from supporting one another, we have great songs.
Yeah.
Who else have I been listening to? Travis Green. There's a song called Respond, which is so beautiful. There's a lot.
So would you say that music has really been a big part of like your life?
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Literally, I think the other day I was thinking, I think I need to tweet about this. Like, music got me through lockdown.
Listen, this is what I was saying. Like, this is why I'm like, this podcast has just worked times out so well, because everyone is looking for new music, because everyone is listening to music. So, which kind of follows on to the next question I have. When lockdown and quarantining and everything was kind of announced, and just like the fact that people weren't going to be able to tour anymore and do live shows, as an artist, how did that affect you? Like, did you kind of panic, or did you automatically think, that's okay, this is fine? Like, what was the immediate reaction?
I think definitely my immediate reaction was not even thinking about my music or my music career. I think in that moment, it just seemed like everything had stood still. Like, wait a minute, what is happening? Trying to understand what was happening. And I think, to be honest, it got to moments where I was just like really low. I remember telling my mom, I was like, Mom, there was just one day I was looking, I think I just laid on my bed and looked at my ceiling and I was like, has it come to this? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's maybe the first time that I've felt lonely, like that feeling of loneliness, you know, being at home alone. I was just like, oh my goodness, what happens now? So I think that was my first thing that I was kind of wrapped my head around. And then I think later, I would start to think about, oh my gosh, like singing, can't sing at a concert no more, can't do any event anymore. Like, man, it was a lot to take in. But I think now I've gotten to this point where I'm just like, okay, this is what is before us. It's not going to be in front of us for a long time, but what can I do now? So I try to be productive. I'm like, okay, well, if I can't put on a concert, then, you know, let me do something, let me record something, let me put something on my Instagram. And,
yeah, I mean, that being said, you did actually end up releasing your EP during this period. Conversations came out. Don't know if you remember that EP that you released. So you ended up releasing your EP Conversations during this lockdown. So I'm guessing that's part of like something that helped you maximize the time that you did have away from doing concerts or just being around people. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So just before the lockdown had been announced, maybe a few weeks prior, I spoke with my music manager, or was it a month before? I can't remember. I spoke with my music manager, and then, you know, we're just talking, and then the idea of an EP came up, and I was like, huh? What? You know, like, it's funny because in life, sometimes things are just thrown at you. You've not necessarily planned for it. You didn't necessarily write it down as a goal. This year, I want to write an EP. I mean, I did have my goals, but I was probably like, I want to have this amount of singles this year, not a 6-track EP. Do you know what I mean? But I think it was really good because it was a push, and it was almost as if, you know, God knows ahead of us. So it was like, I hadn't known the lockdown was coming. But then it's like, I needed to put this EP out because that was going to at least sustain me for a good amount of time. Because when next can I record? When next will there be a concert or an event? Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I had that discussion. Thankfully, I'd already had some songs that I'd recorded that I could add to the EP. And then I think when it got to a point when the lockdown had kind of, you know, reduced, or not reduced, what's that word?
Less restrictions.
Yes. Then I was able to record like 2 of the songs, finish it. And then, it was just left to the producers to mix and master. And there I had this full project in front of me. And I'm just like, wow, like, yo, pandemic, y'all not gonna stop me.
I did. Oh, and you had some really, really, really great collabs on that EP, especially obviously label mates. I was just listening through it again before this interview, and I was just like, no, but this is a bop. This is okay. So how was it kind of working with your label mates in some of the songs?
Yeah, it's always great working with my label mates. I think it's just nice to see, like, to see their style, to see how they, you know, you'll have words in front of you. Each artist or each singer will have words in front of them, but it's just so beautiful in terms of how they interpret those words or how they sing those words. So it was definitely fun. And I listen back and I'm just like, yes, I'm so happy that, you know, we did this song together and we made it work, you know, and the feedback has been so great. So I'm thankful.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good EP. It's and I'm hoping it gets more recognition because it's really good. That's where SheHH comes in. We will be promoting it because it's good. So, I mean, we talked a bit about the label and having label mates, but can you kind of tell the journey of like getting signed by an independent label, HFP music label, who is home to like some of, well, most people's favorites. If you're UK gospel and Nigeria and the USA, and
It's like we're spreading.
exactly, literally all across the globe. And if you know gospel music in those scenes, you'll probably have heard at least one of the songs from this label. So do you want to tell us a bit about the story of how that came to be?
Yeah, sure. So, so prior to being, you know, part of HFP Music, I was just doing my own thing. I was an independent artist, you know, kind of managing myself. Learned a lot about that as well, and that's why I do appreciate my manager, because there is a lot that goes into managing yourself as an independent artist. So I think there's two sides to it. One side, I would say, I thank God for how I conducted myself, because what then happened was I was then spotted, I was then noticed. Do you know what I mean? And just to say, you know, for upcoming gospel artists, you know, just keep focusing on what you're doing. When it is your time to be seen, you will be seen, and nothing can stop that. But then it's also how you conduct yourself. It's how you present yourself to people. People are not just listening to how well you sing. People are looking at character. And there's one thing that, you know, I remember when I was a few years ago back in university, and I remember my youth pastor at the time said something, and it always, you know, stuck with me, that, you know, your attitude is so important. You know, and like that is what people will remember, and that's just always what I've held on to. So just wanted to say that. But yeah, I was spotted. I was singing at a gospel event, spotted, and then conversations were had. And then before you know it, more conversations I had. I prayed about it, and then I was just like, yeah, I feel like this is the next step, and I took it, and yeah, it was. I wasn't really expecting it. You know, sometimes, again, we have a list of prayer points. I want this, I want this, I want this. I probably prayed about it, but during the time that it was happening, it wasn't, that prayer point was not at the top of my list. Do you know what I mean? So when it came about, I was just like, oh wow, it didn't seem forced. It just seemed so natural. It wasn't like, I want a music manager, I want to be signed. It wasn't like that. It was just like, well, Rachel, here's the person, and there you go, walk in it.
Oh, that's amazing. Do you have any other tips for people that are kind of looking to get managed or to join a label, or even if not to join a label, to find like those mentors that they need to kind of progress?
I think in terms of just, yeah, if you're aspiring to be a gospel artist and whatnot, I think I will still go back to the point of focus. Just making sure your focus isn't on being signed. I want to be signed. I want this person to see me. Like, literally, just do your thing, because God rewards His own. God sees what you're doing. And I think if it's a desire in your heart to want to have a mentor, or to want to have people that can help you along the way, I believe that He will bring those people, because this is His work. Do you know what I mean? He's not going to leave us stranded. So that's what I will say.
So, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit earlier about the difference or the similarities between being a gospel artist and then a worship leader, or those kind of interchangeable terms. And you've actually recently talked about this on your Instagram, about certain labels like gospel music or
Yeah.
I kind of wanted you to touch on that a bit, and kind of what you decided from that little experiment conversation. What's the difference? Which one do you prefer? How would you like to be referred to? And why do you think that some of the kind of ways people respond to certain terms is different?
Yeah, it was an interesting question. I just wanted to see what people's ideas on these terms were, and I think from looking at just how people responded, I think there is an understanding that, you know, gospel music is seen as the more like the black folk or the black church music, that has gone on from generations, that kind of have that typical gospel sound, may have that organ kind of sound. But then maybe you might see Christian contemporary as more of the Bethel music, or the Hillsong, the elevation worship in terms of their sound. But I think it was also interesting. I had one comment that she thought that Christian contemporary was more in terms of the writing, so in terms of what they're actually talking about. So like maybe I'm in a relationship, and what is God saying about this relationship? So that's what they thought, like maybe Christian contemporary in the sense that we are talking about real and relevant
Modern
issues.
issues.
So yeah, so again, that's why I put that question out there, because it was just interesting to see what people's ideas were on it. But I think for me, I think you can fall into both. I think, gospel, it might be the sound, but then nowadays if we're looking at, okay, let's even just talk about UK gospel. In terms of the sound, it doesn't typically have the sound of the American church kind of gospel sound. It doesn't. But I think if we want to look at the term, just in terms of what it means, gospel, sharing the gospel, talking about Christ. So that's how I would say you can fall into both, really. But yeah, it was just interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think it also influences the type of writing, like you said with the writing and the music, because you could do a Christian contemporary if it's like talking about feelings and emotions, but then it's over an Afrobeat beat. Does that stop being music? Yeah, I think it's a conversation that we'll be having for like a long time. But as long as the music is good, sounds good, and glorifies Jesus, I don't mind. I don't.
Exactly.
Amazing. So we've kind of talked a lot about the good aspects of, very public ministry, being a worship leader, singer, and it's great serving God in this way. But obviously, we know that not all that glitters is gold. So we just hope that you will feel comfortable to kind of share some of the things that you've had to overcome, or some of the struggles that you've had in the journey so far.
Very, very good question. And I think it's something that we need to speak about, because then people will understand, especially people that are aspiring to be on the same path. As you said, all that glitters isn't gold. I think we have to be so, we just have to remember that whether you're a pastor, whether you're a worship leader, these are still people. They are humans with emotions. They have families. They're not exempt from things happening to them. So I think there's different things. I think I would definitely talk about sometimes just being very hard on myself. And it's like, Lord, you've spoken to me about this career, but how come it seems like it's not where I want it to be, And yeah, sometimes it's hard because you start comparing as well. But then I have to always just remind myself that, hold on a minute, this person, how can you compare yourself to someone that started 10 years ago if you just started 2 years ago? Like, I can't. Our journeys are going to be different. So I've just learned to always, there's always a battle that is going on in our minds, and we just have to learn to combat every negative thought. So I just try. I don't do it all the time. Sometimes it's hard, but sometimes I try. If I see someone that's doing well, rejoice, rejoice as others rejoice, things like that. Because when it comes to my time and something good is happening, I want others to rejoice with me. I don't want someone to be like, yeah, right. I don't want that. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I'll definitely say sometimes it's like, oh Lord, it's like, but I want to be at this point. I want to be here. We always give ourselves goals that we want to aspire to, and it's like, if God hasn't met that goal, He's not doing it. And it's not. Sometimes it's not until I have conversations with friends, and my friend will just be like, "Oh my gosh, Rach, like you did so well. Like you've done this, you've done that," and she's recounting all of these things, and I'm just like, wow,
Yep.
like Lord, just I'm so sorry. You've done all of these things. Yeah, I'm focusing on the things that you haven't done when I should be focusing on all the things that you are doing and have done. So yeah, I'll definitely say that I think has been my main thing.
I can imagine. I think it is good that you have people around you that can like recount that for you. Because the struggle is
Mm.
when you're like, nothing good has happened to me, and there's no one there for you to knock on your head and be like, you're right, like, come on. So it's really good that they can count that with you and be like, oh wait, have you heard this song? Like, oh, great. Or have you seen when God brought you through this? Or having this people is amazing. And I'm so glad and just encouraged to hear that you have them because that will help you to be sustained in the long term.
Yeah. And I think just to say as well, like for those people that might not have people that are telling them that, you know, we I don't want to be blasé about it, but we do need to encourage our own selves and not wait for people to encourage us. And it can just be as little as, okay, today I want to count my blessings and just write down 10 things, like what has God done? And then, you know, maybe just stick it on your wall and just focus on that. Look at it every day so that you know there is something that God is doing. So,
Amen to that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's really good. I just wanted to kind of touch on the fact that alongside like this music career and singing, you are also a social media manager. You're pursuing a career in TV and radio presenting. As a journalism graduate myself, I'm always like, yes, yes, media. So can you just tell us a bit about that and some of the really amazing things you've done so far? And then
Sure.
also kind of how you've utilized social media and kind of pursuing that social media management side as well.
Okay, wow, interesting story. So maybe I should just kind of go to my passion of presenting. So I do radio presenting, TV presenting. So apart from singing, that has always been my love. And in terms of career, that is definitely the thing that I pursue. But in terms of social media, it is so funny how that even came about. I got the opportunity to work with a company, and they were like, "Oh, they're looking for someone to do social media." I'm like, "Social media? That's not what I'm here to do." I said I wanted to do presenting, not social media. But to cut the long story short, looking back, like I thank God because that in itself, that role taught me what it is to be a social media manager. And then from there, that's what landed me my next job. So I was really privileged to work at TBN UK
Amazing.
as their social media manager before leaving. And yeah, I had to have done the role prior to get
Yeah.
the new role. Do you know what I mean? So I think then my passion developed even more for social media. Before it was like, yeah, I use it, but it was all right. It was just it was just there. But it was just funny how the story began to change. Like this is the same person. I would call my mum and be like, "Oh, mum, this social media thing, I don't think it's for me, whatever, whatever." Until I started the role in TVN UK, and then just to hear colleagues say that I transform the social media presence,
Wow.
it's it's just like, wow, I thank God that I could at least leave my mark there.
Yeah.
And the passion for social media has just continued to grow. Like,
That's really cool. I mean, what advice would you give like upcoming artists that maybe the whole entire marketing budget is social media? What advice can you give to them for best promoting themselves and putting themselves forward using it?
yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is consistency. I think what I will say is people are following you for a reason. That's what I always have to remind myself. Like, if you don't give them a reason for if you don't give them a reason for them to follow you, why should they follow you? So that is, of course, being consistent with your posts, the kind of posts that you are sharing. People should be able to know that, okay, she likes this or she does this, just by looking at your social media page. And I think also developing a connection with people. Sometimes it's not just about putting up a picture of yourself or talking about yourself. sometimes what are the conversations that you can have with others? And that's why I brought up the conversation, you know, gospel or contemporary music. I want to hear your thoughts just so that there is a balance. You don't want it to always just be me, I. Sometimes it's how can I reach out to this person, or even have conversations in the DMs, like, you know, encouraging people, and, you know, don't just stop at a thank you, or maybe just go on further to be like, how are you? I'm not saying you should say how are you to all your followers, because some of these followers can be a bit bit funny sometimes. But you know what I mean, just fostering that engagement and that community feel.
Amazing. Yeah, people want to be social on social media.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
And this might be a little bit premature because obviously you still have a long way to go and technically still early days and everything, but what is in store for Rae Rae? Where are you going? What's the legacy you're leaving?
Wow. I mean, I think the most important thing right now is to share with people that Jesus is real, and we shouldn't think of him as this robotic person. Like, he wants us to express ourselves. He wants us to be who he has called us to be. And I want to continue to show that in my music, and, you know, in performances, and just, you know, just giving people that chance to really connect with Christ, and not be shy to be a Christian. And I think why I love the music that I'm hearing more and more these days is it's modern, it's fun, and it just shows people that, look, God is not boring, okay? He's cool.
Really?
If anyone that is cool, it's him. Do you know what I mean? But I think also to just make sure that I am imparting in other people, because what happens when I'm not there? I want to be able to. I want people to be able to say that, oh, I listened to Rae Rae's song and it completely changed my life. I was saved. These are the testimonies, because as I've said from the beginning, like, it's definitely a ministry. And yeah, I'm thankful. You know, it's been, I think I started this journey of deciding to do gospel music in 2016, and just to see how it has grown, you know, being signed by an independent label, it just makes me excited for the future. And I think wherever I find myself, I'll always be grateful, and I'll always give him the glory.
Amen. I mean, I love that you said if people are coming to shows and live performances, and it just made me like think back to when I first heard you live, and I was like, this girl's got, like, this girl can sing, but not just that this girl can sing, that she's a worshiper. Because I think you were just doing like a praise and worship song, and everyone in the whole like place was just like still. I remember you just singing, and it was still, and everyone was like this, like, oh, it was amazing. So I'm just excited to get back to you being out there, and especially armed with this new EP of songs. Them being performed live are going to be amazing. Like, I'm excited for that. I'm excited.
Can't wait as well.
Come on, COVID, you need to go. And I just wanted to kind of like finalize and end the interview on the theme for this series, which is the gritty truth. We've touched on it a little bit, but I really want this series to be all about the reality of like life. Like, I think we as Christians need to be a lot more transparent and vulnerable with both the mistakes we've had, but also things that we've experienced just due to life and not even to our own fault. Be a bit more transparent so that people aren't surprised by the journeys they find themselves on. So with the gritty truth, we're just asking the amazing women we speak to kind of share a gritty truth that they're comfortable with, that God kind of revealed or used an experience to teach them. And it can be in any area of life. It can be in work, in education, in relationships, or it can be in the music industry itself. So what is one, I know this is on the spot, but what is one gritty truth that comes to mind that you think, through that truth or through that really hard time, God taught me something?
Wow. That is a question. Like, my brain was just going like, which one? I think one thing for me would be that, you know, you feel like God has said something to you. You feel like He's confirmed it. You feel like you've gotten your green light. And this is in respect to a past relationship that I had. And I thought, yeah, like, I'm so sure. But then because of, I think what hurt the most was that the relationship ended not because of something bad. No one cheated, nothing like that. But I think sometimes you have to get to that point where you ask yourself, can you actually go ahead with this? And it's like, oof, that was a hard hitting question that I had to ask myself, because I could be like, yeah, let me go ahead with this, but won't be happy with the decision, but just trying to make a compromise with the other person.
Mhm.
Or I say, we're just going to have to end this, even though we don't want to.
Mhm.
I think that was a hard hitting time for me. But I think coming out of it, I realized that sometimes it's not that God hasn't spoken to you. He has spoken to you, but you also have to realize that one, people change, situations change. It doesn't mean God has changed. So yeah, I think for people to understand, going back to the point that I was making, you know, aside from being worship leaders or, you know, pastors and whatever, like, we still have a family, we still have our love relationships, we still have, whether it's studies or a job or whatever, and we always have to attend to these things, as well as also ministering to people. So the job of a minister, so to speak, can be a big one, because it's like, for a second you just have to put yourself aside.
Mhm.
There might be times where you're on stage and you've gone through a personal issue, but you just have to put that aside for a second and know that I just have to focus on these people that people have called here, you know, and just put what I'm going through aside. So I think that is a truth that people need to know.
That shows real humanity, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because a lot of like our conversations in this podcast has been about music and ministry and how God has called us to this. But I think sometimes we forget that when we be called into any type of ministry, whether it's public facing or behind the scenes, we don't lose our humanity too. You know, we still have emotions, we still have feelings, we still have experiences, our day to days. We still have relationships and families and friendships. Um, and people shouldn't get into this ministry thinking that all of that just disappears. And it's just like, I wake up in the morning, I breathe in God, I exhale God. You know, like, maybe you need to eat breakfast. Maybe that's you, you know, maybe you should say hello to your mom, or, you know, so I'm really, really glad you spoke about human truth, that women or people in general need to understand that there will be these gritty truths along the way of your ministry as well. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for sharing this time with us. It means so much. And I think people are going to be really blessed by what you have to say.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the SheHH podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like rating wherever you're listening to this and share with a friend. You can find us on Instagram at SheHH podcast to join in our community.